Dark Flight viewers, nice to see you tonight. We have a special guest with us tonight. We have Evan Reiter from FSExpo with us. Evan, nice to see you.
Likewise, thanks a lot for having me.
We're just basically going to ask you a couple questions, so you're on the hot seat tonight about FSExpo, which I've been promoting for a while.
If I have to?
What's that?
What if I have to? Can I phone a friend?
You may. You may phone a friend if you have to. So feel free. Take a couple seconds, think about each question. They're really, really in depth. But the first one is just tell us a little bit about yourself, just your background.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Evan, as you mentioned, the co-founder of FSExpo, Flight Simulation Association. I've been around flight sim for what feels like forever, probably about a little more than 15 years now. Most of that time recently as a controller on the VATSIM network in the Boston area, and then I was a pilot several years ago as I was doing my real-world flight training. Flew FSX, flew P3D, a little bit of X-Plane, a little bit of Microsoft Flight Sim recently, but predominantly what I do these days on flight sim is control VATSIM and then do Flight Sim Expo stuff just like this. Outside of the sim world, I'm an airline pilot. I fly the Embraer 175 for a regional here in North America, and just really can't get enough of aviation. So obviously do the day job thing in real world flying, and then I come back home and do a little bit more here in the sim world.
So you are 100% invested in this. That's what you're saying.
I guess so. I guess so.
All right, moving on. By the way, if you're in our audience, anyone out there, just let us know if you have any questions. We'll try to answer some at the end if we have enough time. So, next question is, what is FSExpo? Just tell us a general overview of what it is, maybe where and when it is being held this year included, but you can see that at the top, but feel free to include that.
Yeah, so Flight Sim Expo, you can find all the information at that top URL, flightsimexpo.com. We're North America's largest and probably the only dedicated enthusiast flight simulation conference happening this year, September 24th to 26th in San Diego. And it is just an amazing experience. So if you've been to a show like this before and you already know about it, you know what we're talking about. But if you haven't ever been to like a true flight simulation show, so ours in North America, the Cosford show in England, there's one in the Netherlands, there's one in Australia, I think that's probably about it. I mean, there's not many of these things, and they are really, really cool, because where else in the world can you go and you're surrounded by flight sim nerds? I mean, we get this a little bit with, Twitch and with streaming, but it's very one way, right? You and I can see each other, but no one else can really see and talk with us. What you get at the show is that experience of hanging out with people, but in real time, in person, face to face. And that's, I think, just something you can't replicate anywhere else.
Yeah. One thing that I'm going to be attending virtually, so we'll get to that in a little while, but I am going to miss that person-to-person contact, and I do want to make it out one year in person, because I know that's a huge part of this. A lot of people I do know in the flight sim community are going, though, so eventually we'll all meet up eventually in the future, and that is a big component of this. All right, so a little bit of history here. When and how did FSExpo start?
Yeah, good question, and that'll answer one of the questions we just got in the chat there about where I control in VATSIM. I work Boston Center on VATSIM, and I have experience just really in that airspace, and that is a big part of how this event started. So I was with a community called at the time Boston Virtual ATC, that's now Boston Virtual ARTCC on VATSIM, and through that community I got in touch with somebody running a similar version of this event, and it was just that same thing. I kind of went the first time, and I'm like, wow, I mean, being there in person, being able to engage with all these different exhibitors, developers, people was just a cool experience. And so we were able to grow that event into what today is Flight Sim Expo. And it all started really with a community of us pilots and virtual air traffic controllers saying, we would love an opportunity to get together. And somebody saying, you know what, let's bring everyone together, let's organize that and see what happens. We had probably 60 or 70 people that first year, and from there it's been able to grow into what today is Flight Sim Expo. Most recently in 2019 in Orlando, we had almost 1,700 people come out, and that's just, I mean, it's mind-boggling to us how much that event was able to grow, and what it demonstrates really for the world of flight simulation in North America, right? No one really knows what the size of the flight sim community is, but having that many people show up and, expecting to have even more in 2020 when COVID happened and all that stuff, I think that's just really speaks positively for our community.
Yeah, definitely. All right. What types of experiences can an attendee expect at FSExpo? Let's go with virtually first. Let's go virtual attendee. I'm mostly interested in that because I want to know what I'm in for.
Yeah, and the virtual event is new this year. Obviously, because of COVID, we know that not everyone can come to the show if you're international, or just some people, feel like it's a tough thing to do. And we've always wanted to make a virtual part of the event. I mean, every year, even pre-COVID, right? You have people from all around the world who say, "I'd love to be able to do it, but it's hard for me to fly to the US. And so how can I get involved?" And that's what we've tried to offer this year. So the virtual experience is 3 full days of amazing live stream seminars, most of which are going to be broadcast directly from the show site. If you want to get a sense as to what that looks like, you can check out the FSExpo YouTube channel. We've got our 2019 edition of all of those presentations there. So you'll be able to take part in our whole speaker lineup this year. Again, lots of those coming from the show site. We've also got some presenters who are going to be presenting from home as well. So they'll be on basically a Zoom call with you where you'll be able to interact and ask them questions, much like you see on Twitch, but kind of all in one place, all scheduled out over the course of the weekend. Then in addition to the speaker seminars, you've also got a little bit of a virtual exhibit hall where you'll be able to meet with different exhibitors, to chat with them. You'll see show specials, discounts, videos, pictures, and all kinds of stuff about who they are and what they do. So all the speakers, sponsors, and exhibitors that you see on the website, those will all be people that you're able to live chat with throughout the course of the weekend. We also give you a mobile app called Huba. It works both on desktop as well as online on your mobile device, your phone, or your tablet. And through that, you can basically chat with everybody. So we know Discord has become this huge thing, but there's so many Discords. I'm part of like 40 or 50. And what's really neat, when you bring everyone together into a different platform, this one called Huba, now you're basically taking all those 50 or 60 Discords and bringing one person from each of them all into one spot. And so someone asks a question and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for maybe a virtual airline that does this, or I'm looking for a flying club that does this." There's almost always someone that says, "Yeah, I'm part of that, and here's the information." So it's a great chance to like meet up and engage with people. Obviously, the in-person experience, you can do that face to face, but through the online only event, Huva allows for something like that to happen, where there's that sort of cross communication between all these different groups that we're all part of.
Yeah, I think that kind of helps us all out there, because people like me who are going to be attending virtually, like I said, we're not going to get that person-to-person like I'd like to, but it sounds like you got a lot of the bases covered there with all that technology and planning going on, so that's cool. I look forward to actually partaking in a lot of that. All right, and then also just the in-person experience. What can people expect?
Yeah, so if you've never been to a show like this before, I think the biggest thing is you'll be able to try out basically everything you can imagine when it comes to flight simulation hardware. So if you check out our website and you look at who some of the sponsors and exhibitors are, you pretty much have the full experience of flight simulation controls. The honeycomb yoke, you'll have Thrustmaster there with their joysticks. You're going to have, as of just a few hours ago, Turtle Beach confirmed with that brand new Velocity 1 flight simulation package that they haven't even started selling yet. One of the first places you'll be able to even see it and try it is at our show. And then at the higher end of the spectrum, you've got Redbird, who makes flight controls for real world training, Virtual Fly, the Yoko at the sort of higher end, super real world type stuff. So you can basically sit down and try all that stuff all in one place. And then if you're thinking about maybe buying a new yoke, what a great opportunity to do that. Virtual reality, different physical controls like autopilot panels, or if you're into maybe general aviation flying, physical GPS units that you can plug into a panel, all that hardware will be there and you're able to try it out. So where else in the world can you do that, right? If you want to try VR, your choices are you've got to buy a headset, bring it home, and hope you like it. At FlightSimExpo, you can put one on, and in fact, you can try several different ones and see what the experience is like.
All right. So, listen, I'm going to make it out there someday. That's all I know, because when you're saying hands-on, I know I'm going to miss that this year, but there is going to come a year where I'm going to make it out there. What I like to do right now is I like to just show that little promo video about what it looks like from a previous one. It has like flight chops in it and stuff. So we're just going to present that right now on the stream. And then, actually, we have a question before that, if you don't mind. Can people try the hardware, or is it limited because of COVID? That was the question.
No, for sure. We'll be able to try that. So we've actually got iCloth Avionics, who make these amazing wipes. My girlfriend loves them. They're actually in all of our real-world Embraer 175s. They're specifically designed for computer and aviation screens, and they're also 70% isopropyl alcohol, so they're effectively sanitizing. So those wipes will be all over the show floor, and we'll be using them to wipe down stuff in between every individual attendee. So 100% you can try the hardware, and that's a huge component of the show.
Yeah, and obviously being a teacher, I know a lot about all that stuff with the COVID stuff. So it sounds like you've done a nice job in planning. So, all right, let's take a look at what FSExpo looked like in just a couple years ago. I think this is from 2019, if I'm right.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
all right, let's roll the video.
You have young people who are interested, old people who are just learning to fly, and everything in between. Professional pilots, newbies who've never been on an airplane, a whole mix of interesting people.
It's all here to just try, and you got to see it. It's watching a video about this stuff. I'm going to try to make my best video that I can about simulation, how it applies to me, but there's too much here to even cover. You got to see it here. You got to be here to see this stuff. It's amazing where it's at.
Everything I see is going through a lens of how could I use this tool to either save money in flight training or become a better pilot.
Come, as simple as that. There is just so much content here. The people and the relationships and the memories that you build from it are just, you'll never forget it.
Oh my gosh, you totally have to come. I think it just gets bigger and better every year.
This is the place to be in the US for reaching the flight sim audience. We can go to as many gaming conventions as we want, but if we want to talk to the actual flight simmer, this is the only place we ever consider.
You need to be here. There's so much knowledge and power in this room. If you want to learn about it with simulation or learning to fly or almost anything in aviation, I mean, it's right here.
Get your reservations now.
All right, so looks like a good time, and like I've told you before our interview, I've wanted to go to this for years. It's been always just like a lifelong wish. Sorry about that. Lifelong wish to go out here. So I'm glad you opened it up virtually for people in my situation who have like a wife and kids and that can actually now attend. So,
Yeah.
all right.
And you know what? That support, by the way, is huge for us. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that too. Yeah, I realize that like the online experience isn't the same as in person. You know, of course it's not. But for you guys supporting that, that's huge. The cost of running the online only event is about 20 grand, if you can believe it or not, between renting the rooms, getting the equipment in place, obviously streaming that out across different platforms. We've got 2 simultaneous rooms going on. So it's kind of funny because like obviously live streaming like this on Twitch, you know, we say it's easy, as you were just telling me before the stream. Turns out you buy a lot of stuff you just don't expect over time, right? But you know, it's relatively easy to broadcast over Twitch. It gets much more challenging when you're dealing with combining in-person stuff with virtual stuff. You need to get patches into the show and audio so that you actually have a good quality sound. You've got to make sure you get good video. The lighting in the room, both in person and also for those presenters who are remote, that's got to be good. So all that stuff goes into it. And people who are able to support with that $15 online only registration, that's huge for us. So I really appreciate you know, being able to support the event in that way. Believe me, that is absolutely huge for us, and we'd love it if everyone who was thinking about coming to the show and saying, I'm not sure if I can make it this year, that online option is great for you, and it really helps us as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm just glad that you offered it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
all
we're really
right.
glad we could do that too.
We got a couple more questions for you. So, rapid fire. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to go rapid fire on you. All right. Is FSExpo for flight sim enthusiasts only, or is it also for aviation hobbyists and real-world pilots as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely both. We get a pretty even 50-50 split. Lots of pilots who are flight simmers, but about 25% of our audience in Orlando was actually brand new to flight simulation, and many of them would have been pilots or student pilots who were coming to the show saying, how can I use flight simulation in my pilot training? How can this benefit me? And we see this show really as an important way of reaching those people. I mean, you know, you're a private pilot yourself. I use flight simulation all through my pilot training. Anyone out there who's a pilot, who's a simmer as well, totally gets the benefit of this stuff. But if you're a pilot, you know, even today, even in 2021, it's still not super intuitive how you can use a flight simulator for training. And Microsoft Flight Simulator, I mean, it's done amazing things for our community. I'm not sure it's the right tool if you're someone who's saying, I want to get in a Cessna 172 and learn how to use the GPS, because Microsoft Flight Sim isn't quite there yet. And so through both Flight Simulation Association and through this event, what we're really hoping to do is be that outreach to that group of pilots and say, look, this stuff is actually pretty easy. If you come to the right place, you talk to the right people, we have how-to seminars that are designed to do this. And we've really worked on trying to reach that real world sort of pilot audience and getting those people aware of what flight simulation is. Cool story from 2019 in Orlando, as we were getting close to the show. I mean, that was a great show for us, 1650 attendees. We had a record number of sponsors and exhibitors. And so a couple weeks out, we kind of looked at the budget and we said, all right, we've got some extra money here. So, Phil and I, Phil's the co-founder of FlightSimX, and we said, should we just, walk away with that money ourselves? We said, no, let's actually do something really cool. So for probably the first time ever, we had radio advertising for a flight simulation show happening throughout the Orlando area. And this literally was bringing in pilots hearing about us on the radio, coming to a show like this. And, who else is doing that? So that was a really neat thing that we were able to do alongside several other outreach programs. We had Gleim Aviation, we had EAA, the big experimental aircraft association who run the Oshkosh event every year. They were sending out emails on our behalf. Flight Chops, who you just saw in that video, as well as Jason Miller, who was in that video, they both helped us create a specific video that kind of talked about how flight sim can help. So we really try to make this show the place where we can bring new simmers into the community and say, this is a great hobby, this is a great way to benefit your pilot training, and it's a lot of fun.
Yep, and I think that's going to sum up the little second part of that question is what makes it the ultimate event. And I think it's just basically you have people even that don't do simming coming to the event and finding out more about simming and how it applies to real-world flying. And vice versa, people like me who started out simming, didn't think it was ever going to be possible to become a private pilot, found a way and took that experience that they did learn from simming. And actually, it's not going to make you learn the feeling of an aircraft or anything. But it does get you in the right frame of mind and knowing certain things in the aircraft even before you begin. So it does help in certain ways,
Yeah, and then, some of the other things that you'll see also is how much simulation is playing a role in other areas of aviation. So we know how it can help pilots, but did you know that the Air Force and the Army and the Navy are using the same version of P3D that you and I have to train their pilots? And that almost everyone who flies a fighter jet for the US military in any form has actually flown in P3D first. That's something that Trigger Jordan, who's a major with the Air Force's Innovation Wing, is going to talk about at this show. The National Transportation Safety Board, they use the same version of flight simulators that we have to recreate accidents. And the fact they used it with the Miracle on the Hudson flight. So we've got an aircraft investigator, John O'Callaghan, with the National Transportation Safety Board, who's going to come in and say, this is how we use P3D at the NTSB when we're looking at a major aircraft accident, and all kinds of just really interesting applications, that go kind of beyond our flight simulation community. Obviously, we'll have all the big announcements as well, which we're getting to, I think, a question on that in a couple minutes. But I just want to highlight that, of course, great for pilots, great for simmers, but then there's this really unique sort of component to the show that's talking about how is this stuff being applied to other areas of aviation and of flight simulation that maybe your average everyday simmer doesn't know quite as much about.
I think that's a great point, because when you think of FSExpo, you might be thinking of the entertainment value rather than the applicability, of the actual simulator. So that's actually kind of cool. I look forward to seeing that as well. So
yeah, there'll be some really, really neat presentations in there. Again, like stuff that you just, we see a lot on Twitch. Like you guys in the content creator community do amazing work, and it's so cool to see what people are doing and the streams that you guys are doing. I kind of thought the other day back to like 5 years ago at VATSIM before we had streaming, and look at what the pilot quality and how pilots understand procedures. It's just come so far because so many real-world pilots or even just experienced simmers have said, I'm going to actually take the time to show off what I'm doing and demonstrate how I fly. And I think that's just made incredible progress. So you guys in the content creation community do amazing work. The downside of that is that if you're somebody who is like John O'Callaghan, for example, in the NTSB, you're not going to start a YouTube channel talking about how flight simulation can help, because you just wouldn't have the time for it. So coming to an event like this gives that sort of platform for these people who are doing amazingly cool things, but who wouldn't really be able to support a channel full time, to come out, talk, share the experience, and share it with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be awesome. It already sounds awesome. We're not even there yet, and it sounds awesome. So,
yeah, you're right.
All right, who are some of the biggest sponsors? You touched on a couple already, but who are some of the biggest sponsors / companies that will be available both in person and virtually at FSExpo?
Yes, we have, pretty much, run the gamut of the large flight simulation companies. I'll start with our diamond sponsors. Those are the people that you'd expect to see: Prepared, Honeycomb, X-Plane, Thrustmaster, Orbix, X-Plane.org, and Navigraph. So right there you've got, the biggest names for sure in our flight simulation industry. Many of those people, I think almost all of them, will have at least somebody in attendance, pending some of the travel restrictions out of Europe. And so those are probably the biggest names that you can expect to see. You can see all the sponsors and exhibitors, of course, on our website, FlightSimExpo.com. Some of the ones that I'm most excited about, especially in terms of the big announcements that they're planning: Thrustmaster is planning a huge product reveal. They won't tell tell me what it is. That's how significant it is. The past 2 years, they've used our show to announce something. The TPR rudder pedals, for example, they came out in Orlando in 2019. It was the first place anywhere that you could actually see them, try them. And apparently the same thing is happening again this year. So I don't even know what the announcement is, but that'll be super exciting. And they're presenting that on the stage. Turtle Beach, I mentioned earlier, they came out with that new Velocity 1 flight system, which is really cool. It's probably the only yoke I can think of that specifically has options for both an airline sim and a GA sim. And apparently it's got presets on it, so you can actually set it up and it will map the buttons on the yoke to different key commands in the simulator based on what you're flying, if you're flying GA or an airliner. And they've got both like a thrust lever for an airliner setup as well as the main TPR controls for somebody who is actually going and using a general aviation aircraft. So I think that's a really neat system. And again, that'll be there. First time you can see that. X-Craft has got an announcement. And as we're going to share on July 29th with the webinar with X-Plane, there's going to be some really interesting news coming from X-Plane as well that I also know a little bit about and can't share too much about, other than to say that's definitely a presentation that you want to bookmark on your calendar.
Yep. I'm more of a Microsoft Flight Simulator user, but I did get into X-Plane because I got tired of prepared, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yep, and you're going to see lots of Microsoft Flight Simulator at the show. So Turtle Beach is bringing an Xbox, so if you've never tried Flight Sim on the Xbox, this will be an opportunity for those of you coming in person to try that out. And then obviously a lot of other hardware, so Yaw VR, which is a big virtual reality and full motion companies coming out to the show. If pending travel, Scalarchy Electronics will be back with their full A320 shell, so that thing is really cool just to sit in and try. And then a whole bunch of other people that make just really, really interesting hardware options. So, you've looked at the main ones I already mentioned, like the Honeycomb and the Thrustmaster. Probably you've never heard of Altimeter Motives, Flight Sim Builder, Matrix Flight Simulators. And these are people who all sell to the enthusiast market. In many cases, what they've done is set up a 3D printer in their basements. And they're making some really, really high quality, cool stuff at a super low price that maybe people don't know as much about because they're not as widely known in the community. So again, great chance to meet them if you're coming in person. And if you aren't, many of them are speaking. They'll have information about their products, obviously in the Huva app that you'll have access to. And you'll be able to, hang out with the content creators who are walking the floor and doing all the interviews live on the show site on the day of, and kind of live the event a little bit through them.
That's awesome. All right, you touched on some of these questions, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Don't know if you can do this or not, but what do you think will be the biggest announcement or unveiling at FSExpo 2021, and why?
So I guess the best answer I can give you to that is on July 29th, which is next Thursday, both Marty and Austin Meyer, who are basically the two big people behind the X-Plane Flight Simulator, they are doing a webinar with us on Flight Simulation Association from Oshkosh live.
Wow.
And they are going to reveal some stuff that I know a little bit about but can't talk about. They are supposedly going to reveal some stuff that is kind of similar to what you've been seeing from them on YouTube recently if you follow X-Plane. So on July 29th on a webinar through Flight Simulation Association, which you'll also find on our FlightSimExpo YouTube channel, they're going to talk about what they're going to talk about at the show. And at the show, they're expecting to make a really, really big announcement. So that's about all I can say at that front. But I think if you want to talk like big news, what you can expect from X-Plane is probably the biggest. I mentioned the Thrustmaster product reveal that's happening. I think that'll be a big deal. And then we tend to see this as like the place where a lot of developers come in and make announcements. So Flight Factor, who again is another big X-Plane developer, Boeing and Airbus add-ons, is coming to the show making an announcement. I mentioned X-Crafts, who's planning to do a trailer and a product release update from the show as well. So you'll see, I think, quite a few different names across various platforms. But for sure, for me, the biggest one's going to be X-Plane, and then that Thrustmaster hardware reveal of whatever it is that they're doing. Again, every year they've come out with something new right around our show, so we're expecting something big. And I think, don't know for sure, but I think Honeycomb also is planning to, if not announce some new stuff, then at least have some cool new hardware for us to be able to see. So really looking forward to all of that.
This is sounding just as big as Microsoft Flight Simulator last year, I'm just saying, because you have all these unveilings. So I know you can't divulge too much, but you got to go to FSExpo to find out. So, all right.
Exactly, yeah.
What type of interactive exhibits, and I think you touched a little bit upon this, but again, fill in when you can, will be there for in-person attendees? And can you describe one or two of them?
Yes, you're going to see a little bit of everything. So the main categories are going to be software, hardware, real world, and then communities. So on the software side, people like Flight Factor, people like GeoFS, people like TFTI Design, SoFly, they'll be there so you can actually try out different aircraft, different sceneries, and other various products they have for the simulator. On the hardware side, I think I've already beaten that one quite a bit, so I won't go back through those. But again, that opportunity to try stuff, feel it, put the headsets on is a really neat thing. On the real world side, we've got 3 communities there who are part of the real world flight training organization. So Gleim Aviation, Redbird Flight Simulators, and then Extreme Flight Simulation. What you can expect to see from them are the products that are being used in real world flight training, but all of them also have stuff that's applicable to home simmers as well. And they both have a huge home flight simulation presence. So that'll be really neat for people who maybe are doing that pilot training that we talked about earlier, or they're looking to get into flying. Obviously, if you've already got the gear that you might expect to see at your flight school, there's a big benefit there. And then we've also worked hard to make this event accessible to aviation communities. So it's not just developers, it's not just people who charge for stuff. We've also got virtual airlines, we've got flying clubs coming out to the show. Jetstream Radio will be back along with Sky Blue Radio for the, I think, second year for both of those 2 organizations. Virtual United, VA Airlines for our virtual airlines, and flyvirtual.net as well. So we really tried to say, hey, if you're a community, if you're a nonprofit, come to the show, share your community with what's going on at the event. And of course, VATSIM will be there as well as Boston Virtual ARTCC, as they always are. I think IVAO is planning to try and make the trip as well. So you'll be able to really get that community feel, try out and sort of talk to people who are part of virtual airlines and see what that area of our simulation is about, which VAs are obviously huge in our community.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like you had a lot of variety, too, though. So let's say that you go, and maybe VATSIM's not your thing. Maybe you're just more about, hey, can I like to personally fly in the city. It seems like you have enough on the other side, too, as well. Just more than enough to just go and check everything out and kind of weed through what you want to do and maybe explore something new at the same time. Honestly,
Yeah,
that's what it
for
sounds
sure.
like. So,
All
all right.
Usually people have the opposite problem. There's too much to do. So we get people saying, because we've got 2 speaking rooms happening at the same time. So you got to choose between one of those 2 things. And then you've got the exhibit hall going on as well. So at any given point during the show, you've got sort of one of at least 3 places to be if you're not hanging out with somebody, grabbing a drink with somebody, going for lunch, and all the other kind of fun things we do in and around the experience of being at a show like this.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Again, wish I'd be in person. Some year I will.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we'll have to get you out there when we can.
Why should someone consider going to FSExpo? What's in it for them? And again, you touched on a lot here, so do what you will with that question.
All of the above. And I guess the most important thing I can say is just for the in-person side, it's the experience of being around people who are just as nerdy and just as passionate about aviation as you and me are, right? So a lot of places that we go, we don't really talk a whole lot about flight simulation, right? It's not a thing that you tend to bring up because we have real lives and we don't always talk about it. But that's not what this show is, right? This show is, it's cool to be a flight simmer, and no matter who you are and what your experience is, we all kind of have that same we love flying and we love virtual flying. And so it's just never been easier to kind of make friends, say hi to somebody, and you're like, yeah, you fly this, I fly that, cool, let's talk, right? And that's, I think, a really neat experience. And then for those of you who can't make it in person, it's all about the developers and it's all about the big announcements. So nowhere else are you going to be able to access this many big product reveals, big announcements from software developers like X-Plane, and that really unique brand of what is flight simulation doing in different parts of the world. So we've got a pilot named Sarah who's blind. She's going to talk about how she flies the flight simulator, including airline operations, SIDS, and stars without being able to see. I mean, that's just such a cool thing. We've got people talking about virtual reality. Sergio from helisimmer.net, of course, talking about what else but helicopters. I already mentioned Trigger Jordan, Major from the Air Force, talking about how they're using the same version of P3D that you and I have. And a whole bunch of people that'll be coming on talking about how simulation can be used both to sort of benefit flight training and also just to make it as realistic as possible. So there's airline pilots, flight dispatchers, and other people who fly in real life all the time. They're going to be there to share a little bit more about how the simulation experience compares.
All right, that sounds awesome. All right, so last thing, I've heard you had some live streams coming up on Saturday and then next week. So just tell us more about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So Saturday, 2 days from now, we're doing a cross-community panel discussion with the folks from Orbix as part of their Fly July series. So we've got 6 developers from across the community coming together, and basically they're talking about what does this whole MSFS thing mean for the community? Are we going to keep developing for P3D and X-Plane? Are we going to move to MSFS? Do we think that we're going to start developing airplanes just for Xbox and kind of leave the PC side alone? So really interesting conversation, and what we're really excited about is that you can watch it through our YouTube channel, but we'd rather you watch it with your favorite content creator. So we've partnered with several different people who are available at that time to basically host watch parties. Shui94 on Twitch, Oz Flight Simmer on YouTube, and there's about 12 of them, so I'm not gonna be able to list them all. But basically pick your favorite content creator, go hang out with them for an hour or two, and watch the people who make the products that we all know and love in flight simulation kind of chat about this stuff. These people don't tend to do a lot of live streaming. Like, it's hard, quite frankly, to pull them away from the computer. And so to get them out on a stream like this and to be able to kind of hang out with your favorite content creator and watch, I think that's really exciting. And if that goes well, we'd obviously love to do lots more of that. In addition to, of course, just hanging out on the panel, we've also got a whole great bunch of prizes that are available, including a grand prize of the Honeycomb Alpha Yoke. And on top of that, you've got prizes from Aerosoft, Just Flight, Milviz, and a whole bunch of others that anyone who's participating in that can join in. So that's at 4 p.m. Eastern or 2000 Zulu on the 24th. You can find it on our YouTube channel, FlightSimExpo, or through various content creators. And then I mentioned already on July 29th, which is the Thursday, basically a week from today, we have X-Plane doing that presentation about the future of their platform live from AirVenture in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And that happens through our other website, FlightSimAssociation.com. So definitely recommend people check those two out. Both of them are going to be really, really cool. The 24th, great chance to win some prizes. And on the 29th, we're going to hear a little bit more and probably see some more screenshots and video of what future development looks like in X-Plane.
All right. So, last question. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you for coming on the Eric Flight channel tonight. It's been an honor to have you here. And just anything else you want us to know about FSExpo on the way out?
I think we've covered a lot. It's an amazing experience. If you can make it in person in any way this year, you absolutely should. I realize though COVID is absolutely still a thing. Not everyone can travel, and maybe not everyone has the availability. So if you can't, please support the show online. Every little bit helps us be able to run this kind of thing and make this happen every year. And you can find out all the information about the show. There's discounts on the hotel, discounts on travel. We're working on getting discounts on some of the attractions nearby. I haven't even talked about San Diego, which beautiful beaches. The Midway Museum is doing a discount for us. There is the Air and Space Museum in San Diego. They're doing a discounted registration for our attendees as well. So all that information on how you can save some money and have a great time in San Diego is on our website, FlightSimExpo.com. So if you can make it in person, please do. If you can't, the online support really helps. So thank you guys for those of you who signed up. And if you haven't, go on to FlightSimExpo.com and get your tickets, please.
Awesome. We have one question before I'm able to close this out here. Flame HM said, I think you said you were a pilot. Just wondering, are you flying a plane there yourself? I don't know if that was from me or you, but I will be attending virtually. But how will you be getting there?
I wish I was flying my own plane there, but from where I am, it would be a long flight, and anything I could afford, and I probably couldn't afford it anyway. So no, I'm flying in the boring commercial world this time around. But I certainly know lots of people who've flown their own airplane to shows like this, especially if they're local in the area, and that's a cool thing to be able to do too. So if I lived in California and I had a plane, you can bet I'd be flying it there, yeah.
All right, and if there's any more questions, just post up there, but we're probably going to end it here on interview. Thanks again to Evan Reiter from FSExpo. Again, pleasure to have you out tonight, and check it out, FlightSimExpo.com. We're going to put up the website right now so you get a clue at what it looks like. The link is in the banner above, though. And I also have it as an official media partner down below in the Twitch panels. I've been promoting it every single stream since I signed up to be a media promoter, if you will. And it's just been a great thing. I've always wanted to go. I'm really excited about going, even if it is virtually. So I hope to have a great time, and it sounds like it's going to be a great time. I don't think I have a problem with that at all. So once again, I just want to say thank you to Evan Reiter from FSExpo for coming out tonight.
Thanks so much for having us. Appreciate it.
All right, and see if there's no more questions, we're going to end the stream today. I want to say thank you to everyone out there for following me and coming out. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do quick little shout-outs here. I want to say thanks to yourself for following my channel on Twitch. Also to RLionel6 for following on Twitch, and HFactor4 for also following me on Twitch. Everyone have a great night out there. Thank you once again, Evan, and we'll see you at the expo.
Thanks very much. Take care, everybody.
All right. See ya.